other links that you will find will bring value to you. So we're going to jump right in this morning. If you got the email, it had to do with talent management. That's the message this morning, talent management. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we were inside of Serendipity School, and I was teaching out of the book, the science of getting rich. And he was talking about in that particular chapter, that is Mr. Waddles, he was talking about talent. He was talking about, matter of fact, I think that was the section that had to do with getting into the right business. And inside of that, he was saying that you can get rich in any business if you have not the right talent for it. You can develop the talent. So he was implying that we all have a natural talent. And I also spoke in regards to not only having a natural talent, but taking the talents that we have in order to shore up the areas where we're not so talented. That's so important. So when I talk about talents, I'm not just talking about historically, when we talk about talents in the church, we're talking about money. We're talking about, in the biblical sense, the talent was a measurement of gold that was given, or some resource that was given to these individuals to steward, and it usually focuses around that. But I want to expand that this morning with talent, including your gifting, talent including that you are the greatest resource that God has planted in the earth. Now, when we look up talent in the dictionaries, it will we'll get, it's a special, often athletic, creative, or artistic aptitude. Okay, it's ability, the natural endowments of a person. So that is that what you are naturally hardwired with, and all of us are hardwired to a certain extent with a level of talent, gifting. Also, in the biblical sense, it's a formal weight of unit, or a formal weight and unit of currency. Used especially by the ancient Romans and Greeks. And we know that the New Testament is heavily influenced by the Roman and Greek culture. So that's why they use examples and the parables that are ascribed to us as coming from Jesus are often those that align with Greek thought, Roman thought. So I wanted to kind of jump off into that this morning. As you know, I will only do a surface level presentation. I won't get to the really depth of it until Tuesday night when we go into Transformation Tuesdays. So I'm going to take a pause right there and give my back room the opportunity to bring forward anything I need to know before we go deeper into this morning's lesson.
You know what? Not at the moment. Thank you for everybody that's here on Facebook, YouTube, and in the Zoom room. Oasis Spiritual Center is everywhere. And this is a perfect talk this morning. I was literally just talking with the kids about their talents. So I'm ready to dig into this.
Oh, awesome. Good. So I'm glad that everybody is attentive. They're not multitasking. And where are we looking at on the Facebook feed, not Facebook feed, but on the YouTube channel? How are we populating well this morning?
We are populating well. We went from 3 to 7 in about 2 minutes, so that's good.
big YouTube numbers right now, but
that's decent.
It'll happen as people become more aware of that we're out here, as you all begin to share
quality, not quantity.
Right. Yeah, but good. But I want them to have a broader reach. So good. So let's jump right on in. So when we talk about talent management, there is a scripture that tells us in Romans 12:3, for by grace given me, I say to every one of you, this is Paul speaking, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you, or the gift. Now, I want to kind of break that down. Many times when people read this, they say, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to. That's looking at being prideful. But what it is saying is, don't lean totally into the sense of self. That is, don't just think you are taking this thing called life on by yourself. Know that there's an absolute truth that you should be steeped inside of. And that absolute truth is that you and Source, or you and God, you and the Father, you and divinity are one. And therefore, when you think of yourself, you don't think of yourself in mere terms of humanness, but you think of yourself in terms of a divine spiritual being having a divine human experience. Okay, now you put divine in there because you want to know that your steps are ordered, that your life is planned. That is, when you choose to come here, you have some agreements that you have established. And as long as you hold to those agreements, your life is going to go in a certain trajectory. When you step away from those agreements, things can kind of go haywire. So if you want to have an ordered life, if you want to have a life that is filled with success and the feeling of accomplishment, you have to know, what is my sole purpose of being here? You know, that's really key. Because if you know what your purpose is for being here, when you have situations, circumstances that arise in your life, as they will with all of us, then they make sense, or you can align them inside of, oh, I can see what this situation is helping me to fulfill a particular agreement. Now, the scripture says that not only are each of us given faith or talents or gifts that's been distributed to us, but we have an assurance that we can get to an expected end. We have an assurance that we can have success. One of my favorite scriptures is Jeremiah 29:11. And I'll quote it for you from the NIV version. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you." Who is the I? Well, if you keep reading, it says, "declares the Lord." It's talking about the Lord Almighty. It's talking about the Creator. Plans to prosper you. How many of you want to be prosperous? That's right. Raise your hand. Go ahead. Type it right in the chat. I want to be prosperous. So you can be participatory this morning, or raise your hand. Just say, I want to be prosperous. Now, some of us are just so lazy. We don't even want to respond to that. Yes, I want to be prosperous. I see VS drop that in on us this morning.
I want to be prosperous. I'll say it as well.
That's right. So you can say it, you can affirm it. It says plans to prosper you and not to harm you.
Look what Cheryl said.
What did she say? I am prosperous. That's correct. I am prosperous. We all could affirm that this morning. Even on the YouTube live channel, go ahead and affirm it right here, right now with me. I am prosperous. How does that feel? It wakes your cells up. It touches you at the cellular level. So I am prosperous. So it's important that you know that. And this scripture tells us that I know the plans I have for you. So Source cares about you. He has a plan for you. He says plans to prosper you and not harm you. Now, let me put a pause right there. So many of us inside of the religious conversation have been taught that God will harm you. If you are not obedient, if you don't do what the Spirit says, if you don't do what your spiritual leaders are telling you to do, God's gonna get you. God's gonna harm you. That is such an incorrect teaching. The word tells us right here, let every man be a lie if it's contrary to it. He says it has plans to prosper you and not harm you. Now, for those of you who are on this teaching this morning, that's something to park inside of. Because so many of us are afraid to move forward in life, and it's going to be inside of this message this morning. Because we don't want to be harmed, because we think God sits high, looks low in order to zap us when we're out of step, in order to zap us when we make a misstep, in order to zap us when we do something that's so humanly, we are humanly wired to do. Says this plans to give you hope. How many people want hope? So many people are hopeless. When we look at the African American community, the African American community, you can see a lot of hopelessness, and it's breeded. If you go to the communities where there is poverty, you can see people walking inside of hopelessness. I had the opportunity last night to participate or to go to a play that was put out on the streets it was outdoors, and it was at the Annie Malone's orphanage, in front of the Annie Malone's children's orphanage, and they did a great job. The backdrops and everything they did, it was just excellent. And the story just was unfolding about Annie Malone. If many of you who don't know, but she preceded Madam C.J. Walker. Matter of fact, Madam C.J. Walker worked for Annie Malone at one time, but for some reason that story is the only story that has been told to us. But Madam Annie Malone was one of the first millionaires, and this woman did some phenomenal things. So this is what she did with her talent. When the doors was closed early on for her here at the turn of the century in the early 1900s, before the World Fair came. Things changed, so she took her show on the road, and she went down through Mississippi offering her product and educating people on what her hair care products were all about, and it blew up. And ultimately, she came back home, and can anything good come out of St. Louis? She created a brand that was worldwide, and she had really exploited her talent. And so many of us never do that because we allow them to get buried in situations, buried in the fact that you're Black and get back, or buried in, this is working against me. I don't have this. But take what you have in your hand and go to work. He says, the scripture says, plans to prosper you, plans not to harm you, plans to give you hope. And guess what? A future. Not just today, but a future. We need to steep inside of that. We need to stay inside of that. We need to cultivate that thought. That source desires to see us excel, to see us successful. When we have setbacks, when we have situations, all of those are part of cultivating us into greatness. Sometimes the setback is the catalyst for you to be projected to a whole new trajectory. Now, let me share with you a story this morning. It's called the Parable of the Talents. And many of you are familiar with it, but stay with me. It's found in Matthew 14. It says, again, it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold. Remember the talents. And to another 2 bags. And to another 1 bag. Check this out. Each was given according to their ability. You have right now what you have the ability to steward. And how you handle what you have now will determine what you'll get later. Many of us are not even aware that we have some God-given talent or ability. And the scripture goes on and it says, then he went on his journey. So he left all he had in the hands of his team. Then the man who had received 5 bags of gold, look what some of them did with their talents. Went at once, immediately. The one who was given the most immediately went to work. Didn't have to sit around, didn't have to plan, didn't have to think about what he was going to do because he was already busy doing something. He received the 5 bags of gold, went at once, and he put his money to work and gain 5 more bags. Now he says, put his money to work. So we can interchange this. He put his talent. And sometimes your talent is always associated with resources. And sometimes you have to put your money to work for you. You can't do it all yourself. And that means where you find that you are strength, you play to your strengths. If you are strong, where you find that you are weak, you don't play to your weakness by trying to develop those weaknesses. Sometimes you don't have time to go back to school to develop that particular weakness. Maybe you can just take some of your resources and hire someone to be your copywriter, or hire someone to be your publicist, or hire someone to do that with you, to program something or to put some things in the computer. You can't type, you don't have a computer, find someone that can do it. So you got to put your talents, not only your physical innate born talents to work, but put the resources that you have to work also, that you can hit your expected end. So also the one with 2 bags, 5, 2, and 1. That's interesting. 5, 2, and 1. Also, the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. So we see the 5 double, the 2 double. That is, they hit capacity. The least they could do is double. But the man who had received 1 bag went off. Okay, went off. Let's stop right there. He went off. Oh man, this is all I got. He's just going to give me this. Many times we go off when we look at our situations, our circumstances. We may not go off to God, but we go off on a tangent. But he says, despise not the times of small beginnings. Know that it is the universe's design to take little and turn it into much. But you got to do something with it. So he received this 1 bag, he goes off, and he says he dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. I ain't even gonna do nothing with this. Just like sometimes we have a penny and it fall out of our hand and we let it stay there. Isn't it amazing how you can just find pennies everywhere, nickels everywhere, dimes everywhere? Because the little things, the things of little value, people don't appear to value. But if you get 100 pennies, you got $1. Come on now. So things add up. And the scripture says, check this out, after a long time. So sometimes when we have something, we hope that it happened quickly. So after a long time, the master of those servants return and settle the accounts with them. That's bringing everything to one, balancing the books. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. All right, that's the best he can do. Okay. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. See, if you can't handle a few things, why do you want to handle big things? Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your happiness. So it is not how much others have, it's how much you have. Is what you do with yours. And we sometimes are so involved in what other people have, what's going on in other people's lives. Now, he goes on and he says to the third guy. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man. So first of all, he is projecting why he did what he did, because he believed the master to be a hard man. He says, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid. There it is. What are you doing with your talent? How are you managing your talent? Is it being managed inside of fear? He says, so I was afraid and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. That wasn't the best he could do. That was the least he can do. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown, because I got others working for me. I have a team, and I gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers. You would have been better off giving it to somebody who could have invested it for you, so that when I return, I would have received it back with interest. Now, this is what you need to know right here. This is a biblical principle. Source, this is a universal principle. The universe in which we live is always expressing or impressing, and we talked about this yesterday, for increase. Increase. You sow one seed and you get a plant, and on that plant is many seeds. There's increase. The little comes into much. And if you're just getting a return of one for one, then you're not really seeing increase. You're just kind of holding the line. And so this morning, I wanted to, before we go into this deeper on this Tuesday, I read a very interesting article not too long ago that talks about 10 ways to identify your talent and utilize them. And the reason why I'm going to do that, because many of us don't even know we have a talent. This is the first time you heard that. You think the only talent was the money you have in your hand. But I want to talk about that this morning. I want to introduce you to 10 ways to identify your talents and use them. One of the first ways you can do is take a life assessment. Now, what's a life assessment? A life assessment is a way of understanding your potential. It's an assessment where you're probably engaged in a conversation with a coach. So you're not necessarily a therapist, because a therapist oftentimes is problem solvers. Coach is one who helps you really see what you need to see and empowers you to make the right actions. So many of you may have taken the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which tells you what your type was. And it also can tell you what some of your motivations are in life. But I'm saying there's various tools for life assessments. I use a number of tools for life assessments when I'm engaging my clients. And usually I start with their birth dates. And because inside of the spiritual numerology system that I operate inside of, I'm able to ascertain it's a little deeper than just, some people will use your birth sign, but I like to use a person's birth date, full birth date. Now, you may say, well, two people can be born on the same birthday. That may be true, but they're not born in this. Each person that is born on this, you may have the same cards or the same numbers, but there's a lot of the variables that come into play also. But it gives you an indicator of what you are kind of wired for already. So taking a life assessment. And so you can find out what categories you fall into, what your strengths are, what things that you may not even be aware that you should even consider. And then you may say, that adds up. So take a life assessment is the first step, because you many times you're born into a situation and you're not given the opportunity to really identify what your talents are, because you're in survival mode. Your family was in survival mode. And because they were in survival mode, they didn't have the extra that was probably necessary in order for you to have another experience. Another thing you can do is to not only take an assessment, but you can find what makes you feel strong. Sometimes it's like, have you ever had the moment when everything feels easy and light in your life? You know that you have the answers, or that you're capable of finding the answers to something. When you're drawn toward a sense of ease, that is usually our inner talent speaking up. That is, you just kind of bump into something and it makes you feel a certain way. And so sometimes we have to acknowledge what things give me that good feeling. Helping children, helping seniors, playing a sport. There could be a variety of things that make you feel strong. That's an indicator of what perhaps is a talent and how you should be even using it. So it can be an indicator how you can use the talent that you have. Another thing you can do is look at, what are you spending the most of your money on? Okay, we often put our money where our mouth is when it comes to what we desire. And so it's easy to look at what am I spending? What do I spend the majority of my money on? And sometimes we are squandering our money. We're just spending our money. But I'm saying the things like when you get the extra, do you buy books? And if you're buying books, are you buying a particular book? Are you finding that you go to a particular event or something of that sort? It can tell you a lot about where you're putting your resources, tells you what is important to you. Another way of finding out what your talent may be simply to ask your friends, what are your best and what's your worst qualities? And to be ready for that. Sometimes we don't want a 360 review because we don't really want to hear what we're not good at. But sometimes knowing what you're not good at is not a judgment, but it helps you understand perhaps I shouldn't even be in pursuing that thing, or it might be the direction I need to go in, but I don't have the skill set and the talents, but I know that that's essential. So I have to talent up. I have to put my money where my mouth is. I have to invest in other people to help me. But just asking your friends, what are your best and worst qualities will help you get a sense of perhaps what your talent is, where your talent lies and where it don't lie. You can ask your family what you loved as a child. So, because sometimes we get so far down the path of life, and it's not until we're 45, 50, sometimes we're in retirement that we're now ready. Okay, I want to pursue my passion. I want to pursue what I'm really talented at, because we have taken on jobs, we have taken on careers, life has happened, and we put all that other stuff on the back burner. So you can ask your family members, you can ask your mom, you can ask your dad, you can ask those who knew you as a kid. What did you love? What did you like to do as a child? What did they see in you that perhaps never gotten cultivated? Now you're amassing all this information. Another way is you can write in a journal, and that's a good thing. When you write in your journal, you want to let your thoughts flow onto every page, free flow. You ain't got to be trying to correct them or anything like that. And then you just walk away from your journal. And at times, go back to your journal and read it. You'll see a stream of consciousness coming forth in your writing, okay? Identifying your talents. So you come back after a day or two, or a week, and you reread your pages. Now, here's what you'll notice. A lot of your thoughts circle back to one main idea. This is usually a talent or perhaps even a desire. So you can find what your true desires are, and you can also find out what your talents are. Now, a desire is not always a talent, but a desire tells you what is driving you. And that desire, if you have a desire, it also shows you that there's a potential waiting to be exploited. Now, so you want to use your journal writing as a way of looking for hidden answers, okay? What are you looking for? What are you longing for? What opportunity do you wish you could come through? Just reading it that way. Now, the seventh thing you can do to identify your talent is look for talent in others. Sometimes looking for something somewhere else, you find what you're looking for. Sometimes being inspired by others' talent makes us realize what we're good at too. If you are a writer and you read something that's absolutely connects you to your soul, try to define what exactly lit you up on the inside. Okay, you may enjoy watching basketball players, or you just love basketball, but you're only 5'1". You can't make it in NBA, and you're 40. But maybe it's telling you that you love it, and maybe you're supposed to be a writer, or everything there is about basketball, back to the beginning of the game, the startup of the game. Then you can look at it. What can I do with this? Why do I have this innate ability to remember all these statistics as it pertains to basketball? So what you want to do is take inventory of what's naturally good for you. You may think it's nothing of it. You think everybody has that talent, but you find out, no, you have a particular gift, a particular talent that's lying dormant, that's hidden. Even though it's obvious to others, it's hidden to you. And you go through your whole life with this hidden talent. You're just as bad as the individual who hides their talent. So you should be on a search. If the word tells us that source knows the plans that it has for you, to prosper you, to give you hope, to get you to an expected end, to give you a future, then guess what you should be going to? You go to the source. And it don't mean you go outside of yourself, but you go inside of yourself. The answer is you. The answer is in you.
This is so good. I have got to slow you down. I wanted to say something quick. I think something that really gets in the way of talent, at least what I see in my generation, is money. It seems like people are just so thirsty to make the money to do what obviously life needs to do. We need money. So no judgment there. But I think that gets in the way of people really cultivating what's important to them. And so people tend to abandon it, right?
Yes.
Several times in my life, knowing that I was a writer my entire life, writing wasn't paying the bills all the time, right? So I have to go to somebody's corporate job and figure out how to make ends meet to raise my children. And so a lot of times we abandon our talents and we abandon our dreams because of money. And I just wanted to
Yes.
throw that in there. And I just think it's really worth talking about that being a serious factor and why we abandon our talents, or in
Yeah.
some cases can't even find them.
Yeah. And I'm gonna drill down into that on Tuesday, but I'm gonna stop by and park right here and talk about it. You should not be in pursuit of money. You should be in pursuit of purpose. Now,
Ooh,
here's what people need to know, that on your way to your purpose, you have to do something to get paid right now. So you don't just pursue your purpose, but now you're not taking care of your responsibility. The word of God says a man who does not take care of his own house, and that does not mean a married man, it's just saying a male or female, a person who does not take care of his own house on two levels, that is the place where you live at, and two, the place where you live in, that is your physical body, is worse than an imbecile. If you don't take care of your own house, you're worse than an imbecile. So on your way to developing that company, you got to make sure you're taking care of home. And sometimes people say, I don't want to work for anyone. Well, if you don't want to work for anyone, you may be missing an opportunity to learn some very critical things. Because when you work for companies, you'll find that a company runs in a very efficient way. It has a brand, it has a product, it has a service. The person who owns the company is like this steward, this individual who went on a journey and left his things in the hands of those who were capable. Because you got to understand, you can't do it all yourself. So sometimes when you're working, so despise not the time of small beginnings, when you're working for someone else, it's an opportunity for you to learn systems. It's the opportunity for you to learn your strengths and your weaknesses. If you can't write, if you don't like public speaking, then you're not ready yet to be your own boss. You're not ready yet, because you can't what? You cannot push your brand. If you are afraid of getting out in front of people, if you cannot put together a 1-minute elevator speech that tells what you do, who you are, you should have a 30-second, 1-minute speech that tells who you are. You should have a 30 seconds to 1-minute speech that tells what you're about. You should have a 30 to 1-minute presentation that tells what your deliverable is. And you have it rehearsed, not to the way where a place where when you do engage an individual, it sounds like a canned speech, but it should roll off your tongue. Because if it rolls off right, the person who is listening to you, and we spoke about that yesterday in the lesson. The lesson yesterday was the impression of increase. You have to give people the impression that you're the one. Now, back to what you were saying. So you have to, so you go on a job, not just for money, but you go on a job because there's some value you have, or they wouldn't hire you. And there's something of value they have, or you wouldn't have pursued that job. For many of us, we look at our place of employment based just solely on the outcome, the TikTok, what I can get by giving my time. But you should not be living life trading time for money. No, you should get out of that paradigm. Now, so I'm just saying, I'm not one to tell people quit your job and pursue your dream. You'll know when to quit. You'll know when to quit. It should be calculated. It should be, the word tells us what manner of man would want to build a house, but first does not measure out look at the land he's going to measure or build a house on, know the soil, know is it on a floodplain, know what type of materials he need to build that house in that particular environment. That's wise. And many times we just jump right out because we have a desire. But the desire has to fall within the right timing. Timing is everything. Timing is everything. Now, too many of us are trading time for money. It's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins. And you go your whole life, and guess what? Now you're in retirement. Now you're 60, you're retired, you got a pension coming in, and then you want to pursue your passion. You don't have the strength for it. You can't run the long race. You can't play the long game at that age. So we have to learn how to be in alignment. It's the word tells us the steps of the righteous are ordered. That is, those who are in alignment with God, they're ordered. And it'll never lead you down a path that is not preparing you for something. That's why I always say things are always working out for me, even when they don't appear to be working out for me. Guess what? Things are working out for me. Got to stay right there. You got to stay with Jeremiah 29:11. You got to post it and know it, that it's going to be all right. The plans are already been set for me. Here's what we don't spend time doing, though. Seeking the plan, following the plan. We think we know the plan, and we get run off half shot. He says another thing you can do is take stock of your books. Look at your books, look at your music, look at your movie collection. It tells you what something about what your passion is. The media the media that we consume says a lot about what we value, what we own, says a lot even greater. So look at what you own, what you're watching, what you're reading. So, but see, in this day and age, they're just captivated by the thing that appeases their itching ear. No, you got to start paying attention to the things that you're listening to, that you find you'll go out of your way to watch, or you'll say, man, I wish I could have watched that. All of these things tell you something about you. So that's important. The ninth one is remember what you have been thanked. Remember what you have been thanked for. Think about it. Remember what others have thanked you for. When people thank us for something, they have been helped in some way. That goes right with yesterday's Saturday's teaching, the impression of increase. People thank you when you bring value to them, when you add something to their lives. Notice what you are thanked for on a regular basis. Are you a good listener? Are you a good teacher? Are you a good motivator? All of these things are talents, even though they seem small. Remember that your talent shouldn't just be in service to other people, but to you as well. If you're in a constant mode of selflessness, use your talent as a caregiver to take care of yourself. Some people say, I just love taking care of other people. Well, there's going to come a point in time that if you haven't taken care of yourself, you won't be able to do that either. Okay, give to yourself. Pay attention to yourself. And the 10th point today about that we're looking at in regards to how to identify or uncover your talent. Be open to change. A lot of people are not open to change. They're not open to change. Know that as we age, our tastes change, our strengths grow. Don't allow yourself to be complacent by telling yourself the same story over and over again. Many people are stuck in the same story. If you say, I'm not athletic because I didn't play sports in high school, you're not giving your current self a chance to identify new talents. Maybe you can go play kickball. I'm just joking with you, but I'm saying, don't look at what you couldn't do back then and say that you can't do it right now. Being open to change basically means letting go of preconceived notions and honestly absorbing the world around you, being present to what's showing up in your life. What you're going to find is this kind of openness will lead you to discover new talents and help you prepare yourself to tackle any challenge that life unfolds. Now, that's important. You want to live your best life, you want to change your life, it's going to take some action on your part. Even though Source, God, knows the plans that it has for you, you got to be willing to say, yes, Lord. You got to be willing to say, here I am. You got to be willing to say that I'm really ready to get in it and win it. Can't look for excuses. Can't look for excuses. So when we look at this parable today, we see this parable is so reflective of so many of us in areas of our life. You may be talented in a myriad of areas, but you got to find that one talent that matches your sole purpose. As I sat there last night and I listened to the story, I find myself in the same old community in a whole different place. Everywhere we go, there is the story of the veil has happened to the Black community. When we look at, even when we look at desegregation hurt us more than it helped us. Now, it appears as though it helped us because you had the opportunity to experience some of the finer things in life, but there was a cost that came with it. It depleted our communities, our own resources. And why is it anytime we want to develop our own, we're looked at as though we're being separatists? But every other people group can have, like even here in St. Louis, there is the community called The Hill. It's an Italian community, and it's manicured lawns. It's an old community. It was in existence at the same time when the Ville was in existence. But guess what happened? They didn't value our communities. And so now there's a lot of things that will make people harvest in our communities. I'm going to say this. Look at any community that was segregated at one time. Especially when you look in Black communities that were segregated, you find that we did quite well. We had some of the best sports teams, and just use that as an example. And then they began to harvest from our community. They began to pull what we would call the cream of the crop from our community. And it left our community depleted. And many times when we leave our communities, we don't return to our communities for a variety of reasons. Because for the truth to be told, our communities are not safe. They have gotten so denigrated and demolished that they're not safe places. But we got to understand, if we can mobilize, if you identify one thing that African Americans could benefit, that you offer, there's a whole people group, a population that you can do quite well. Look at Annie Malone. Look at there was enough room for Annie Malone and for Madam C.J. Walker to amass millions. We don't even have Annie Malones and Madam C.J. Walkers in our community. We have the other nationalities who come in and sell hair, sell lashes, do our nails. They come right in the middle of our community because people know that we are consumers. Now, that's a whole nother conversation, but I'm saying to you, you don't have to become anything more than you are to actually have the life experience you desire to have. You don't have to wish you were lighter, wish you was taller. You don't have to wish that you were born on the other side of the tracks. Now, granted, it may have been easier, but the side of the tracks that you grew up on, the plastic spoon that you have in your mouth, prepares you. It gave you a desire for the silver spoon. So without what you were born into, you don't have the callous, or you wouldn't have the character, or you wouldn't even have the care. So you're born in poverty, you should have a care, you should have a compassion, you should understand what it's like. Not that you focus on that, but now you don't go into judgments and you know what, I worked this thing. So last night, I'm gonna end with this. As I laid in the bed, I was like, so what is the answer? Church isn't the answer. We have more churches than any other community, but look at our community. Sheer education isn't the answer. When you look at the most educated population in the world today is Black women. Our Black women are some of the most educated, but look at the state of the Black women today. And you may say, oh, the Black woman's on the rise. At some sense, since they are, but even in that, there's a compromise. We lose a sense of family. We lose a sense of relationship. It's all about self. So I'm saying right now, I'm looking for the answer. I'm looking for what needs to be done right here, right now. So that's my passion. That's my talent. Evidently, I have this talent that is I have to seek source to deliver it in a way that others can see that it will be expanding to their life if they follow the principles. But I've had to spend a lot of time doing this, like finding an old building. That's what the church represents to me. And it needs to be demolished or and taken back down to its foundation and rebuilt, deconstructing and reconstructing, because the old house that we've been given don't work. It doesn't work. If it worked, we wouldn't be in the predicament we're in. So, what are you doing with your talent? Join me on Tuesday night where we take a deeper dive. All right, let's go into the back room. We're right at 8:53. A couple things I wanted to say. If this message has been a blessing to you and you want to be a blessing to the ministry, there'll be some links dropped in here on YouTube and on the Zoom room that you can go to Cash App, or you can go to the actual PayPal, or you can go to the website and you can give through our Tithely app. For those of you who are actual tithers and or on a consistent giving path, you can go that way too. Whatever's easiest for you. Now, I make this space because that's what you have in your hand is your talent. And if you're not willing to take a little of that, don't say that when I get more, I'll give more. Don't say when I get more, I'll give. Because what you do with what you have tells me what you, and not just me, I'm just saying anywhere, tells me what you'll do when you have more. Because when you have more responsibilities. And so you will never have the mindset that this is a right action I take anytime that I get something. Before I break it, I bless it. I bless the whole and I return it to source. And I say, how should I steward this? Do you bury it all in yourself? Or do you multiply it by following the direction? So if you want to be a blessing to this ministry, we welcome it. And I thank those of you who are consistent givers and supporters of this ministry. If you are interested in knowing what we do Monday through Friday here at Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living, we meet Monday through Fridays at 6 a.m. in the conversation of morning meditation. Wonderful place to be, all of 10 to 15 minutes. It's not a shouting match. It's not a petitioning match. It's really a place of meditation and affirmation. So join us. Check out the website there. Tuesday nights, we do a deeper dive on this Sunday's message, and that's called the Transformation Tuesday. It's because there's no transformation without application. Just having information don't change you. If that was the case, the biggest place of change would be the library. Or matter of fact, Google is deceiving people because people have access to so much information, but it doesn't change their lives. The word says with much learning comes much heartache. And if you don't have a guide, if you don't have someone who can help you understand, you'll be a woman or a man most miserable. Saturday mornings, we have Saturday school, and we're wrapping up the teaching that we've been inside of, The Science of Getting Rich, Attracting Financial Success through Creative Thought. You create things. You don't compete for things. Now, that's all I have this morning. Again, I'm Asar. If you have a question or a comment, just go ahead and drop them in. We got anything out there we want to highlight before we wrap it up this